I borrowed the money, caught a plane out of Lubbock, drove my little Volkswagen to Lubbock, caught a plane, came into Tyler, got in just as the meeting been going, about 15 minutes. And they still were praying and stuff. And then this little Chinese man stood up. And he began to speak on Genesis 1 and 2 and Revelation 21 and 22. How in Genesis 1 and 2 you have the tree of life. And in Revelation 21 and 2 you have the tree of life. The first 2 chapters of the Bible you have a river flowing. The last 2 chapters are rivers flowing. First 2 chapters you have precious material, gold, bdellium was his pearl, and onyx stone, precious stone. And in the last 2 chapters of the Bible you have a city built up with these precious materials. Gold, pearl, and precious stone. I mean, I was writing so fast, my pencil was smoking. I really believe I had never heard anything like this. I never heard. And to me, my thought right away was, this is the same as hearing Watchman Nee. It's exactly the same person. I realized the name was different, but as far as I was concerned, from having devoured that book so long and really had gotten into the ministry, the one unique ministry of the New Testament, I realized this is the same. It's just like hearing Watchman Nee. I had never heard anything like that. And in those days, Brother Lee held 3 meetings. Had a morning meeting, we had an afternoon meeting, and we had an evening meeting. Then, I had to go back. I had just planned to come that one day, and I had some responsibilities back. The next day was the Lord's Day. So I flew, but I told him. I think I told the host there, I told him to tell Brother Lee I would be back. But I also talked to him. That's right, I did talk to him. He said, yes, be sure and come back. Come back and whatever we do on the Lord's Day, you can hear the tape of it. So, of course, he was surprised I came, that I even showed up. Because he was there when the phone call was made. So I went back, and like I said, I was responsible only to the President, and I could do what I wanted to. I'd only taken 1 week off for my 2-week vacation. So I just, on my own, took the next week off, because he was going to be there the whole next week. So I got my wife, and 3 students came with me. And I also called Benson in Dallas and told him about it. And the 3 students that came, 2 of them didn't make it. One of them was Sharon Coleman, Jim Coleman's wife. But there was a brother by the name of Jim Reed and another sister by the name of Linda Shipman. And then Sharon Coleman. We drove to Dallas, and there we met Benson, and Benson decided not to go. So we went on then and got to Tyler for the evening meeting on Monday. We drove all day, got up early Monday morning, and got to Tyler 500 miles away that evening. And we heard Brother Lee all week long. And just day after day, morning. I guess it was just morning and evening then. Morning and evening. It was held in a woman's club in Tyler, Texas. It started through these Navigator Bible classes. But eventually, it was amazing. It started with 400 people in September. When he came in November, there were 200 people. By the time it went on, it went down to 100 people. Because he was talking about life. And there's not that many people. Especially among that group, it was a kind of a hobby type thing among the rich elite. If you don't know anything about Tyler, Texas, it has more millionaires per capita than any city in the United States. And it was a kind of a lot of rich elite, kind of a hobby, Bible hobby class, you know. So they weren't that interested. But, of course, later on, Brother Lee said those meetings in Tyler were just for us. There's no doubt about it. Anyway, but there were some others there, you know, in Tyler, who did come into the church life. Some of them came for a while and left. Some of them stayed. Those that are stayed are Bob Bynum. He was there. And Gene DeBerry. He also was there at that time. So, after hearing Brother Lee for a week, you can imagine hearing him for a week, I asked to have a time with him. And I said, you know, he already knew, of course, all about me. They had told him everything. And what I was doing. I said, Brother Lee, okay. I had read, you know, like I said, the Normal Christian Church Life. I didn't understand it. But I knew if this man takes that way, it's got to be right. I didn't see the church yet. But I realized if this man takes that way, it must be right. So I came to him. I said, Brother Lee, what do I do? Do I quit my job? Do I leave the denomination? What do I do? You know, whatever he had told me, I'd have done it just like that. He said, quit your job, leave the denomination, move to Los Angeles, whatever. I'd have done it. So I said, what do I do, Brother Lee? And he said, you pray, brother. You pray. That was it. You pray. Okay, so I went back now to Wayland Baptist College after a week here in Witness Lee. Of course, a lot of it was over my head. I didn't understand a lot of it. He gave at the end messages on, Deuteronomy and how you have to bring everything to Jerusalem and all of that. But I didn't understand what he's talking about. Didn't understand anything. I just knew I saw a man. If he took this way, that's where I'm going. So when I left, then I found out he was going to have a conference in Los Angeles, the December conference of 1963. So I knew I was going to be there. That was it. And I told him I would be there and hopefully bring some students with me. So I went back after a week of hearing him, and I sat there in my office and watched the students file back and forth, on the hallway. And I felt like I was in a morgue watching corpses walk. That's exactly how it looked to me. No life, everything totally dead. Absolutely no life here. I never had such a feeling. I thought it was just like everybody was dead. The whole place was dead. So I got the tapes. Another brother that was from Odessa, where Francis Ball was. But Francis Ball hadn't heard anything yet. But he was from Odessa, and it was through him, Francis Ball, eventually got to hear Brother Lee. He had the tapes. He recorded everything. So I went, and of course in those days we had those big reel-to-reel recorders. That was it. And I had to carry this big old thing, and we didn't have any way to duplicate it except play the whole thing the whole time for the whole hour's message or whatever it was to get one message, then play the next one to get through till I had, I don't know how many messages from the whole week. But I went there and stayed 2 days, and we covered it, message after message after message, from one reel recorder to the other one with a little thing going between. But there's no way you could speed it up. You just had to do it that way. That was it. But I got all the tapes, and then I came back and played and began to play those tapes at my home, and I let it known mainly among those 30 students who saw something through Major Thomas, including all these brothers we mentioned. There's a lot more, I just can't think of their names. And we begin to play them every night in my home. And of course, then by that time, I made the decision to quit my job. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had no idea what I was going to do. I just knew I had to be in Los Angeles. And in order to keep my job, I was supposed to be in a seminar of all the BSU directors for the whole state of Texas for that time. Well, I wasn't about to go there. I was going to be in Los Angeles. Witness Lee was in Los Angeles. That's where I was going. So, I called to resign. I waited 2 weeks. Brother Lee said pray, but I didn't have to pray. I knew. You didn't have to pray. I knew. But I waited 2 weeks. I remember getting out my seminary student handbook that has all the pictures of the professors, that helped me in Greek, and my Greek professor especially, because he really wanted me to stay and go into graduate work, get my doctorate, major in Greek, and all this stuff. And I didn't. Praise the Lord. I didn't quite have the grades. Praise the Lord. If I had, I might have. Anyway, I started looking through, and I started looking at this professor and that professor and this professor, Dr. So-and-so here and Dr. So-and-so. And I remember asking the question, can all these people be wrong? And I was asking it to the Lord. I said, Lord, can all these people be wrong? And the answer came just as plain as it could be. And it's not what you might think. He didn't answer, yes, they're all wrong. The answer came, the question is not whether these people are right or wrong. The question is, are you going to follow me or not?
Amen.
I said, amen. Get that? So, eventually, 6 of us went to the December conference in Los Angeles, 1963. In my little Volkswagen went Ben McPherson and Ray Graver. In another car, Rodney, of course, borrowed Benson's car. Because Benson hadn't heard anything yet. He just kind of heard that we were kind of crazy now. He hadn't sure. Nobody had done anything. But I have to bring up this point. There's a lot of things here. Before we left, I knew if I went there to hear this man again, I'm finished. I knew as far as Southern Baptist, it's over. I resigned my job, and I called Dallas to resign my job on November the 22nd, 1963. Do you know what date that was? That was the date Kennedy was shot in Dallas. And I called, he was shot at noon, and I called right before noon, around 10:30 or 11, and the man was out that I had to speak to. So I told him I would call again in the afternoon. And then, of course, Kennedy was shot at noon. I went home and found out the news, of course, and then I went back. And here I have to call Dallas. All the lines were jammed, everything. I thought the call would go through, and I was sort of hoping it wouldn't. Because I didn't know what I was doing. I'm going to quit my job. What am I going to do? Where am I going? You see, there wasn't any church to see in those days. There was nothing. I just saw a man. That's all. I saw a man. Hallelujah. So, I called again that afternoon, and the call went right through. And I told him, I have to resign. I cannot be at the seminar for the directors. And so he agreed then, you see, this is around Thanksgiving time, that I would work up until the Pagamous holidays, and then at Pagamous time, I would be finished. I don't like to put Christ's name to something that's pagan, so I call it Pagamous. So it was agreed that my job would terminate at the beginning of the Pagamous holidays. So that was wonderful to me on one hand. And then I had I still had I think 2 weeks vacation coming or something, or 1 week. And he said, of course, you'll get your vacation pay, you get everything. So I realized I had enough money to last me through January anyway. So How much time we got? So we went, 6 of us. In the other car was Rodney Phillips, Benson's brother. He borrowed Benson's car to go. Old 1956 Chevrolet. And we went in my 58 Volkswagen. And we made it. I remember it cost $11 to go from Texas to Los Angeles. $11. Gas was cheaper. Everything. This was, of course, December 16th. Then brotherly shared. We were there 10 days. 10 days. That was it, boy. Finished. Gone. It's over. And of course, in the sharing, he shared clearly on the ground of the church. And the new wine is for the new wineskin. And you can't put new wine in old wineskin. I mean, I got crystal clear. I got crystal clear about everything concerning the ground of the church. Anyway, got very clear. I realized it's all over.